The other thing about the Mycenaean civilization is their tombs are very, very elaborate. Okay, this is the entrance into one of their tombs. Over time, we see the tombs become more and more elaborate, so we know that over time they became a much more wealthy civilization. Okay, this is what their tombs look like. They're huge places. Okay, this is what the outside looks like. Where do the Mycenaeans learn this? Well, they learned this from Egypt, right? So at this time in history, the Mycenaeans and the Egyptians were in close contact with each other. The Egyptians have a habit of burying themselves with all their treasure. Okay, so this is their coffin. This is a mastaba, which is their tomb. Okay, as you can see, it's huge. It's almost as big as a house. So the question then is, why would they do that? Okay, we've discussed it previously, where throughout most of human history, we've understood that this is a material realm, and then once we die, we go off to the spiritual realm. Guess what, guys? You can't take your money with you. So why are you burying your money with you? Right? Okay, this is a mastaba. Okay, as you can see, it's a very elaborate, ornate place, and the Egyptians were known for this. But also China, right? The first emperor of China, the terracotta warriors. Why is he buried with an army and such wealth? That makes no sense. If you die, you die. So why is this happening? So the argument I want to make to you is that this is happening because money, capital, too much of it changes the fundamental chemistry of the brain. It makes you crazy. Okay, so let's do a thought experiment. Okay, the thought experiment is this. Let's just say Satan were to come into this room and said, hey, I'll give you guys $1 billion, but you have to live forever, and you have to be my slave forever. We'd be like, no, why would we want that? You know, like to have $1 billion, but then be a slave for all of eternity, like Satan? No. But, okay, let's assume we are the richest people on earth. We all have $10 billion, right? Now Satan says to us, you know what? $10 billion is a lot of money. I'm sure you enjoy your life, but you're going to die. And when you die, you can't take that money with you. But hey, I can make you live forever. I will let you keep this money, but you have to be my slave for all of eternity. Do you agree? We would agree. That's the difference. You see what's happened, right? Money makes people crazy. All right. So bronze. Okay. So remember, bronze started off as just a weapon in order to obtain power. But then over time, as powerful people became more stable in their lives, they used bronze to make jewelry and pottery to show their status, okay? And then over time, because rich people wanted it, everyone wanted it, and so bronze just became a currency, wealth. And it was just easy to store, universally recognized, and mobile. And this happened over centuries, over hundreds of years. Okay, that's a pattern here. All right, so this is a map, a table that shows you how capital is formed. Okay, so capital needs to have universality. The more people want it, the more valuable it is. It has to be able to be. It has to store value. Okay, it has to be permanent. Okay, does that make sense? It has to be mobile. It has to be available. Okay, it has to be rare enough. So once it has these different elements, then it becomes a currency. So if you just look at history. We've used different sources of currency. So we have seashells, cattle, grain, women, slaves, drugs, oil, bronze, gold, and US dollar. We've always had money as a concept, okay? But money, for most of human history, signified a debt that could not be paid off. Okay, so David Graeber, who's an anthropologist, he wrote about this in his book, Debt. Why do we create money as a concept? Because there are certain transactions in which there was so much debt you couldn't pay it off. Okay, so like most of human interactions, it's just reciprocal, right? So you help me, I help you. Okay, but there are three things in which the debt can't be really paid off. Okay, the first example is let's just say I kill your brother. Well, now you have to come kill me, right? And if you kill me, then my family's going to go kill you. Okay, and it creates a vicious cycle of vengeance, right? So the way to get rid of this problem is, if I kill your brother, I acknowledge that it's a debt I cannot be paid off. So I give you something valuable. It could be gold, it could be jewelry, it could be anything, okay? All right, so that's what money is. That's the first example. Second example is if a woman marries into your family, right, then that's also a debt that can be paid off because you've just taken away a daughter. So you give me a gift, maybe some gold, maybe a cow, a horse, it doesn't matter, okay? That's the second example of a debt that can be paid off. The third example, and this is a really important example, is let's just say that you have a great person in the community. He's a great leader, or he's a great priest, or he's just a great person in general. And he's done a lot for you. But he dies. What do you do then? What you do is you bury him with gifts, with gold, with money, okay? And so it's a monument to his legacy. You know that he can't take the stuff with him to the afterworld, but it doesn't matter. All you're doing is you're acknowledging his contribution to your community. And that's why when you dig up graves in ancient times, you'll see people buried with gold because the community is acknowledging this person was great. We will forever remember him. And so the money is a way to acknowledge this fact. Okay, does that make sense? All right? So for most of human history, that's what we use money for, as to symbolize money that cannot be paid off. But then over time, as society became more sophisticated, we use other forms of currency, okay? And as you can see, all these different forms of currency, okay? Whether it's seashells, cattle, grain, women, drugs, oil, it doesn't really work in terms of universality, stored value, and mobility. But bronze does, okay? And after bronze, gold does. And then after gold, today we have the US dollar. Okay, does that make sense? Okay? So once you have an universally accepted currency, you can now have globalization. Right? And so bronze was a major discovery which allowed for globalization. Yeah, go ahead.
I think bronze and the gold is commodities and US dollar is like money stuff. But why does bronze? Because is it because drugs and oil does not count as capital? So it is not.
Okay, look, you're right, okay? Drugs can be a currency. The problem is that it's not universally accepted, okay? And also, the problem with drugs, of course, is it causes a lot of problems to your society. So think of opium in China. And it's hard, it creates a lot of problems. So it can't be universally accepted. In fact, most countries would ban drugs. But at the same time, you're right in that it is valuable. It's a store of value. So you guys don't know this, but there are lots of governments that have secret supplies of drugs. Because if the world falls apart and you need to rebuild society, you need wealth, right? So gold, you need gold, but guess what? Drugs is also a form of wealth because people want it, okay? People crave it, all right? So is this clear, right? So once you have a universally accepted currency, you have the basis for globalization, and globalization happens naturally as a result. All right, so capital is just a monetization of power. That's all it is. And you can have any form of capital, okay? The problem with capital is that it exploits, it alienates, and it consolidates. Okay? So go back to the example where I'm the leader of a village. If there's no money involved, all I care about is winning the respect of my people, okay? And so I work hard for them. But once capital is involved, I see each person as a commodity, okay? And therefore, I become alienated from my humanity and from others. And now I want to exploit people in order to generate more capital. And over time, what will happen is that the strongest will have all the capital, which leads to massive inequality. So the only result of capitalism is, one, massive inequality, corruption, immorality, okay, and alienation, anger, indifference. And this is the world we live in today. Does that make sense? It's just the nature of capital. There's no way around it. Okay, so as we discussed previously, we have two different mindsets, okay? We're composed of two different individuals. We have the altruistic nature, so that we care about relationships. We care about empathy. We care about creativity. And there's our utilitarian side, which is all about material objectives, logic, and hard work, okay? So in school, you have the utilitarian mindset, okay? Like, how do I get good grades? That's all you care about, all right? At home, you care about Relationships. You care about maintaining good relationships with your mother and your father and your siblings and your relatives. What we also know, and this is really important, is that people who are altruistic, people who work for others, tend to be more creative than other people. But people who are obsessed with money tend to work harder than other people, okay? That's why globalization happens so fast, because everyone's in a rush to make as much money as possible. Okay? But eventually you reach a point where a few people have all the money, and so everyone's like, screw this, I give up because I'm never going to be rich. You lie flat, right? Tongue ping or quite quitting. You just give up. Okay? And this is the world we live in today. Okay, now capitalism is a problem because it changed the fundamental nature of your brain. Okay, so this is a article from the Atlantic Monthly, which is a very popular magazine in the United States. There are these neuroscientists who have done brain scans, and they discovered that power causes brain damage, okay? In fact, if you look at the brain of a psychopath and the brain of a wealthy person, it's pretty similar, okay? Yeah, they did brain scans, and it looks as though people who has too much money has brain damage. Why? Because a normal person is able to have empathy, is able to understand the feelings of others. Guess what? If you're too powerful, if you're too wealthy, you don't have the capacity to have empathy. You can't appreciate the feelings of others. So think of like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. They have actually no concept of empathy, okay? They are completely unable to relate to the feelings of other people. This is Brian Johnson, okay? Brian Johnson's a millionaire. He spends about $2 million a year on health, okay? He's done some crazy things. So for example, he has a father and he has a son. And he believes in blood transfusion. So if you transfuse your blood, you become younger. So he's trying to figure out how to live forever. Okay, so he'll do things like blood transfusion. But he works so hard, man, because he'll get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, exercise. The food he eats is the most nutritious food in the world. And he'll regulate his sleep. He's always monitoring his heartbeat. He's always exercising, okay? His life sucks. And the question you have to ask yourself is, if you have so much money, why don't you just enjoy it, Why not just enjoy your life? Why are you focused on living forever, okay? And that's a problem with wealthy people. They're kind of scooping the head, okay? He looks like a vampire, guys, okay? This is him when he first, started this project. And you can see he looks like a vampire now, all right? I'm not exaggerating here. Look at this guy. The problem is that there are lots of wealthy people in the world, and they happen to like this idea of living forever, okay? So let's do a thought experiment. You're a billionaire, okay? You have like $100 million, $10 million, like $10 billion in the bank, $100 billion in the bank, who knows? You have a problem, which is, how do I keep this, right? Because you're gonna die. Okay? And you have all that money, so you can do whatever you want. So what you do is you invest in Brian Johnson, you invest in scientific research to live longer, but you also do what? You also build bunkers, okay? Because you're afraid that the world will end and you want to live forever, so you build bunkers. This is Mark Zuckerberg's bunker in Hawaii. It's kind of stupid because if the world's going to end, is your bunker going to save you? Probably not, okay? But he spent like $26 million, or $260 million on this stupid thing, hoping to live forever. And this is what it looks like on the inside. It's crazy to go through life thinking about how to live forever and how to survive an apocalypse. Why not just enjoy your life, okay? They also join secret societies. Why? Because secret societies may have the secret to reincarnation, or the secret to immortality, or the secret to longevity. They don't care. They have so much money that they're willing to invest in everything. Okay, so they're willing to try blood transfusion. They're willing to build bunkers. They're also willing to join secret societies. And that's why you see secret societies growing in power and popularity today. They also worship Satan, okay? Because, again, if you have $10 billion, you're stuck, right? Because you don't want to die. Like, you don't want to, like, it's what we call sunk cost fallacy, right? You're like, I worked so hard for this, and I have the best life, but I'm going to die. And when I die, all this is gone. I have to start all over again. I don't want to do that, okay? So they're willing to do anything, including worship Satan. In fact, what we will learn is that the religion of Satan became so popular in order to solve this problem, where wealthy people, they want to live forever. And they want the world to stay the same as it is now. But as you learn in this class, it is impossible for the world to stay the way it is. Change is a constant. Things move in cycles. Capitalism gives rise to wealth, but it also destroys wealth. That's just the nature of life. Okay?